have a slide.
No worries. So our team at Expanding Hope here has lots of conversations about land acknowledgements and how we can, I guess, do better and make sure that, or try to ensure that our land acknowledgements aren't performative and that we're not just doing them to check a box. This is very much a work in progress and a conversation that we continue to have and don't have an answer for yet. But whenever I think about land acknowledgements, I also think, like, while I might be uncomfortable about doing a land acknowledgement because I don't want it to be performative, I also am more uncomfortable not doing a land acknowledgement and not bringing that commitment to reconciliation and decolonization into kind of start our presentation and into the work that we do. So what I encourage all of you to do, if you're comfortable to do so, is to ground yourself, put your feet on the floor, feel the ground beneath you. If you're near a window, look out the window. If you want to close your eyes and picture being outside in some place that you love, you're welcome to do that. I will just share a little bit about my own journey here in feeling like when I do a land acknowledgement, I want to do it right, and I wanted a template and I wanted to check the boxes. And part of my learning is that that's not really how a land acknowledgement works, and that's not how kind of my own commitment to reconciliation works. That it's the way I think about it can often be very Western and colonial to, want a worksheet to fill out. So I try and, before I do a land acknowledgement, reflect upon what's happening in my life and how I'm bringing that commitment to reconciliation into my life by talking to my own kids about the colonial history of Canada. We had a conversation this weekend about Louis Riel because many other provinces celebrate this past Monday as Louis Riel Day. And then we try and bring it into our work at Expanding Hope and take the time to listen and reflect and learn and grow as we need to. But we do gather today from many treaty and settlement areas across Alberta. I honor the land I'm in today, which is Mohkinstsis or Calgary. Mohkinstsis is the traditional Blackfoot name for the land where the Bow River meets the Elbow River. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, for they hold the memories, traditions, cultures, and hopes of Indigenous people. We seek to gain more understanding and respect for Indigenous cultures, and we grieve the injustices that have been and continue to be done to this land and the original people, and commit to learning and walking alongside Indigenous peoples. We commit to learning the truth from the past, to building trust and accountability with our Indigenous community in the present, and to creating a just and equitable future for many generations to come. Thanks for being with us today. I'd now like to introduce or pass it over to my team. Chrissy and Andrea, go ahead.
Thanks, Elise.
Good morning. All right, I'm gonna start us off with purpose and intention. So just to tell you a little bit about the background, Expanding Hope is in the end of its second year, so we're still a pretty new project and initiative. Our partnership is with the Terra Centre in Edmonton and Kindred in Calgary, funded by the Ministry of Children and Family Services. So what they did was they put out an environmental scan, so the ministry, across Alberta. And what they found was this identified need for supports and services for young families throughout the province, particularly in areas of Alberta where harder to reach, so rural communities. So really our focus is not Calgary and Edmonton, because we know that they're better resourced, but to focus more on those rural communities. And then Andrea is going to talk about the two streams of service that we have.
Yeah, so our program kind of falls into, like Chrissy was saying, two streams. So after they did that environmental scan, they kind of identified what they wanted Expanding Hope to look like and what supports and services they wanted to offer. So in the first stream there, you can see we're working with families, we're supporting young families to, making progress towards goals they identify. So whether that be in regards to like housing, education, healthy parenting, healthy relationships, anything like that, we're doing that like case management work with them on that like day-to-day, week-to-week basis. So just, yeah, trying to support them in whatever areas that they're looking to make progress and are wanting just that support, additional support. The second stream, which is really cool, is that partnership and capacity building with rural communities and the supports and service providers in those communities. So we're connecting with FRNs, we're connecting with FCSSs, kind of just sharing a little bit about our program, but also to providing opportunities for like training, capacity building for professionals who are supporting young people in their communities. It's definitely not a means to duplicate service, but it's meant to kind of be there as an additional support to either the young parents directly in the community or for the service providers in the community who are wanting to work with this population specifically.
So who do we serve? Our funding is for parents 21 and under, pregnant or parenting already, and then to support the people that are supporting those young parents. So that might be grandparents, foster parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, whatever their natural support looks like. And then to work with the kiddos that are generally aged 0 to 6, because we're working with really young parents.
So what that direct client work can look like is in a couple different forms. So we are looking to continue to present groups virtually. So these groups would be covering things like life skills, parenting, circle of security. We talked about having groups geared towards like caregivers for like support. How do you have tough conversations with your adolescent in your life? So like if they do come to you and say like, hey, I'm pregnant, how do we receive that news in a really compassionate way? Because we've heard a lot of stories about like, when teen parents talk to their parents about being pregnant, that experience wasn't so positive. So these groups are online through Zoom. We try to make them really flexible to the young people and what they've got going on in their lives as well. And so what that one-on-one support looks like that Chrissy and I do is typically in a primarily virtual model, just because of like our locations. We're based at Edmonton and Calgary. But depending on like their location, if they're in a neighboring community, like here in Edmonton, Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan are quite close to me. It could be like a hybrid model where I'm seeing them part in person, but then also primarily virtual. So like over the phone, text message, Zoom, whatever kind of works for them. Also being really mindful, rural communities sometimes have challenges around like phone signals and connections and Wi-Fi. So trying to be really flexible around those things. So there's no cost associated with this program. It's not like, you get 10 free meetings with Chrissy and I, and then there's a cost that comes in afterwards. There's no cost that becomes associated with accessing supports or services for anyone. It is very much that kind of case management style. So where we're connecting with them pretty regularly to check in, see how things are going, work on those specific goals. But a big part of what we do too is getting them connected to the supports that are within their community. And that's why it's so important for us to learn more about communities and connect with service providers in person, because it makes such a difference when we're working with a young person, when we're like, oh, you know what, I can call Chrissy up at the Edson FRN and get you registered for the prenatal class and stuff. It's just that connection helps us to help these young people to build connections too, and know what's in their community and what they can access and what can support them. And then obviously too, we support with things like positive parenting, child development, attachments, ASQ, DSP, basic needs, building natural and professional supports, and life skills and personal well-being. I like to say sometimes we like serve as a traffic conductor. Sometimes it's like pointing people in the right direction for different supports and services. So that's kind of what that client work looks like on a day-to-day.
So working with FRNs and service providers. So based on the environmental scan that I talked about at the beginning, that was done like with FRNs, the areas that came out of that where they're wanting extra support or to learn more about is really around supporting teen fathers. So what does that look like? What does the involvement look like? What if that relationship is broken? Indigenous parenting practices. Again, Andrea and I, that might not be our scope, but to learn as much as we can, to share the knowledge we do have, and then to connect in with somebody more knowledgeable in that area. So, we're not pros at, teaching Indigenous parenting practices. That's not something we do, but we certainly know of people in FRNs and service providers that do that work. How to support pregnant and parenting teens came out of that. So we know they're there in the communities. They're not always walking through the doors of the FRNs or service providers, but there's teenagers around. And so really finding out how to support them best. Working with stigma and barriers faced by teens, talking about adolescent development, trauma-informed practice with teens. What does that look like? How do you do that? Teen caregiver and infant attachment. So again, why that relationship is so very vital at a very young age.
Yeah, so this is kind of a continuation of that, of some more themes that came out when we did that environmental scan. So, so helping to build capacity of service providers while supporting young families and communities. As many of these rural communities were like, we want to support these individuals, we want to connect with them. We just want to make sure that our supports and services are really catered towards them and are really accessible to them. We get to host a series we call the Lunch and Learns. So it's kind of where we bring in some experts and really knowledgeable people in certain areas to come in and spend, about an hour and a half with us. And we send the invitations out to FRNs and service providers in rural areas and invite them to join us on Zoom with the person that we're able to connect with to present on different topics. So like we've had before where we had some nutritionist and dietitian information. We have an upcoming series that we're working on right now that focuses on like doula and midwives, but we've done groups before too about like family identity. I believe we had some dads workers come in and connect too about working with teen dads. So different things and topics of interest that might be really valuable to service providers. And it's just a really great opportunity. It's very casual just to come in, listen for the afternoon, and maybe make some connections. A lot of the work too that we do is consultation. So we get calls from communities with service providers who are working and saying like, I'm working with this teen parent and I'm just looking for some more ideas that you might know of. The benefit about Kindred and Terra is we've been doing this work with teen parents for a really, really long time. So sometimes we know of supports and services that might be really beneficial to that population. So more than happy to connect with professionals to talk about things, give some ideas, do a little bit of research, that type of thing. Training with volunteers and working with young parents is another thing. So Chrissy got a great opportunity to work with a volunteer group who's interested in working with this population. But just kind of giving them some insight on what it's like to work with teen parents and how that's such a unique youth population to work with. And just giving kind of that just insight in the work that we've done with them so far. And we've attended quite a few interagency meetings, kind of keeping informed about what's going on and then providing updates about what Expanding Hope is doing too as well.
And then just to add to Andrea's, we also provide workshops, educational
Hi, good morning. My name is Rebecca Bright, and
sorry. Yeah, so we provide workshops and educational opportunities for FRNs to build skills and mobilize that knowledge. So if there's a certain area, you have a parent that's wanting to, learn a little bit more, and you're like, I really struggle with this age or knowing how to guide them or how to support them best, then we're able to kind of provide some educational opportunity there. So also offering professional development resources, facilitate a community of practice. So we've just started that recently. Elise usually sends out an email with an invitation and a link. It's once a month. We welcome anybody and everybody to come to that and share their knowledge or learn from everybody that's in the room. There's great topics, and it's really about what service providers want and what they're seeing. in the rural communities. And then to collaborate with the FRNs to facilitate knowledge sharing. So we don't always want to be the ones doing presentations and facilitating. We love the opportunity to co-facilitate, to collaborate together with all of Alberta in lots of different areas. So that can look a lot of different ways. Like if you have a group and you're like, oh, I'd love a co-facilitator, somebody with a little bit different of a background, we would love to do that with you. If you want to jump on board and you hear we're doing something and you're like, hey, this is a great opportunity, this is part of my learning, I would love to, is there room for co-collaboration, or then we can look at that too.
Awesome. So really cool part of Chrissy and I's job is we get to travel across Alberta and go to these small communities and connect directly in person with communities, service providers, community members, whoever kind of has a stake in working with youth and teen parents in their community. So we've done trips all the way up to High Level, Peace River, Edson Hinton area. Chrissy's done a lot of travel in Southern Alberta and things like that. And the reason why travel becomes so important for us is because it really gives us the opportunity to see a community, understand it, and hear about the barriers, successes, and kind of plans that agencies have in doing this type of work. A really good example is we took a trip up to Fort McMurray and got to connect with quite a few service providers up there about some of the challenges they had around natural disasters and stuff like that. Unfortunately, that's a community that's really been hit by that a lot in the past few years. And as you drive through Fort McMurray, we realized that there was such a physical evidence of the impact the wildfire still had on Fort McMurray. And we kind of got to understand how much that impacted the work that they do down there and how it changed the work that they were doing and stuff. So, and obviously we still really utilize technology. We do things like Zoom, emails, phone calls, text messages and stuff, but there's something so unique about getting to connect in person and just, hearing people's stories, hearing about their communities, learning about what's going on. It's just sometimes technology sometimes can be that thing that makes it a little bit harder to share. So it just really, we find it just really makes us have an opportunity to have a really awesome, genuine connection and something to really remember too, sort of thing. Many of us get dozens and dozens of emails throughout the day and stuff like that. So we're really fortunate when people are able to make time for us, to meet with us, to hear about Expanding Hope, and to share a little bit about their communities as well. And we've got lots of plans for travel in the near future. We've got a trip to Grand Prairie planned soon, and many more to come after that, because being there in person is such a difference. And then we're more than happy to continue to follow up afterwards through technology, or hopefully get a chance to meet again if we're passing through town or something like that.
So the FRN Resource Bank consists of four different agencies or collective groups that support rural communities. And so Expanding Hope is us, and so we work rurally, as well as Rapid Access Counseling. So that's a service through Kindred, which is in Calgary, but they have a rural team where you can book counseling appointments. They are one-off rapid access, so easily accessible, easy to book. You can go as many times as you want. You can pick your schedule, and it's really quite an easy way of connecting and getting support short-term if you need it. Multicultural health brokerage. So those folks are supporting lots of newcomers to Canada. They have access to interpreters that speak many, many different languages. They do counseling, also work across rural Alberta in a virtual capacity. And then the Connect Society, they are they exist to support and strengthen connections amongst the deaf, hard of hearing, and connect them to hearing people. So they have supports in place across rural Alberta that if you're working with families that you know, are struggling with having connection around being hard of hearing, then they're the folks to call for that.
Chrissy,
Yeah.
I just have a question that I can answer, but I'm going to ask you because it might be on the minds of these folks. Are those services available to folks who aren't connected with an FRN?
Yes.
Of the resource bank?
Yes, of course. Sorry. They absolutely are. There, it doesn't matter. There's really no barrier in place other than that possible virtual barrier, you know, if there's a lack of internet or connection. But yeah, absolutely. You don't need to be connected in with an FRN. You can, you know, any service provider can call them, ask questions. Anybody in any community can call them and ask for support. Thanks, Elise.
Perfect. Sorry, Chrissy, I realized I put you on back-to-back slides here.
That's okay. So what makes our work unique? We're going to talk briefly about the following. So adolescent brain development, why it's so unique, what's happening in their young developing brains, fostering a sense of community, opportunity to create family identity, adolescent sailboat, so that's supports and services. We're going to get into that a little bit. And then that collective experience and understanding.
Yeah, so we obviously in the work that we do, it's really important that we talk about adolescent brain development. It informs the way that we do the work. It informs the way that we kind of respond to the young people that we're really fortunate that we get to work with. So we always try to keep in mind that complexity and wonder of the adolescent brain. It's this beautiful brain that's in this thriving moment of development. It's on fire. There's hormones. There's all these things going on. And we have a really great phrase that I got from another Terra staff where they talked about, you know, working with adolescent brains is unique work alone. Like youth work requires like a lot of, you know, adaptive kind of planning and programming and things like that. But when you work with adolescent parents, it becomes a little bit more complex because you get the idea of like, there's two brains now. There's that adolescent brain, which is on fire. It's this beautiful thing. And then you have this parenting brain, which suddenly is a caregiver. It's a provider. It's all these things. And it's kind of like being mashed all together sort of thing. So we try to be really mindful of that when we think about the work that we do with these teen parents, because it's reminding ourselves in those moments, like which brain is asking for support right now? What does it need? How can I cater my services and my supports to respond to that brain really well? Because sometimes with teen parents, it's almost like that adolescent part of them gets really quickly dismissed sort of thing because they're parents. They're supposed to be more responsible. They're supposed to be, you know, kind of have everything figured out. But it's still so much of that adolescent part that's a big factor in everything that they do in their decisions and their peer interactions and things like that. So we just like to share that example because we talk about it a lot in the work that we do and how we work with teen parents. So obviously the concept of thresholders is really important. If anyone's read The Myth of Maturity, that concept is really beautifully captured there. It's this idea of, you know, older adolescents being on this threshold of about to jump into young adulthood and how that can be such a daunting experience. We talk all the time about Dan Siegel's concept of flipping your lid and how that can definitely like give a lot of explanation for certain reactions and behaviors when working with adolescents. And then one of my personal favorites too is the paper tigers kind of analogy from the documentary Paper Tigers, and keeping that in the back of my brain while we complete this really unique work of being like, you know, is this a real tiger or is this a paper tiger? You know, and I recommend if anyone hasn't seen the documentary Paper Tigers or hasn't read the Dan Siegel write-up about flipping your lid or even The Myth of Maturity, those are really great tools to be used when doing this work with this population of adolescents. So, and then, yeah, Chrissy's going to talk a little bit about that sense of community.
Yeah, fostering a sense of community. So that a sense of understanding, feeling of belonging, ability to give back, and ownership into the community. So we often see young parents donating back. That's like one of my favorite things to see when I'm visiting the school is so in Calgary we have a school for young parents, Louise Dean, as Andrea is out of Terra Centre in Edmonton, and their young parenting school is Braemar. So we often see young parents, you know, they're given clothing, they're given items for their child, and then when they're done with those items, they want to give back. They want to be part of that community. So, you know, they take such pride in being able to donate back to somebody else, or sometimes, you know, sharing advice about their favorite thing or deals that they found out at the store. You know, oh, here, you know, there's a great deal on diapers or wipes, and like, oh, you know, I found that the best way to get, you know, a stain out of out of a bib is this, right? And so they really come together and own that community, and have that feeling of belonging, and then they give back into that community, and then that ownership of community. So where they want to be part of that decision making, they want to know what's going on, and they want to be involved, because those are their people. They found this great connection in this community, this smaller community of their life, where they feel like they do belong, and they're able to really kind of thrive and do the work and achieve some of their goals through that.
Sorry, there we go. So I've been working at Terra Centre for about 3 years now, so I've gotten to work with quite a few different teen parents, in kind of different situations. And one thing I noticed throughout the work that I was doing is oftentimes the reoccurring theme around family identity came up, you know, very inadvertently in conversation or very direct in conversation. I heard lots of things from the youth I work with about, I want to break the cycle for my kids. I don't want them to grow up in this type of household. I don't want them to have these types of experiences, right? And so they have this almost like fierce, like energy behind this idea of values and beliefs and what they want their family to look like and what they want their children to experience. And it's this really beautiful thing because they're just so oftentimes deeply rooted in that because of their previous experiences, which, you know, we know oftentimes can be instances of trauma and complexities as they grew up. And so they oftentimes have a very clear view of what they want their family to look like. I don't know how many times I would be shown pictures of a third birthday party or something. And you could tell it was quite the birthday party. It might have been the best third birthday party ever. And the teen parent would then say like, oh, you know, I'm really struggling now because I spent so much money on this birthday. And, you know, and there'd be a conversation about like, you know, finances and spending and stuff. But they would always be like, you know, but it was worth it because I didn't have a birthday party like that. So it was really important for me to plan it, to have this really wonderful experience, and for my children to have such a happy memory to surround it. So there's that sense of hopefulness too for their kids. They believe that their, you know, situation can be so much different, and we get to be in the wonderful position as service providers and to try to support them in establishing that family identity. So it's talking about, you know, what does cycle breaking look like? What does it look like to establish traditions around holidays or, you know, birthdays or, you know, going back to school and things like that. And it's really realizing that they have so much capacity to build this family identity on their own, but it might just be needing that support along the way, as many of us probably needed when we were, you know, starting our families too, right? We have that support of our friends and our family, and things like that. And so it's just getting to be along for the ride for that, which is a really beautiful thing. You get to see as teen parents figure that out. So yeah, it's a really wonderful thing to get to see and to get to be a part of, even if it's just for a very small moment sort of thing.
And then there's collective experiences and understanding. So this just really talks about the fact that this whole initiative is brought together through two agencies that have been doing the work for a really long time and have a lot of collective knowledge. And so Terra Centre just celebrated a couple years ago 50 years of supporting young parents. And Kindred, you know, has had 60 years plus of service. And Louise Dean has been around for a really long time. And so you look at the collective knowledge of the people in that building that learn through the young people that come in with their own stories as staff, or, you know, that have taken training and that are working with our young people. So, you know, there's certain things that the schools and our agencies really do well. And, you know, that's like teaching classes, you know, sometimes that are around prenatal learning and what's normal and, you know, what does a doctor's appointment look like, and walking them and holding their hand through it, but letting them lead the way. And then, you know, parenting, life skills, things like that. And so really diverse programming and knowledge keeping that we might have to share when working with young families. Yeah.
Perfect. So kind of like take this moment to do a little bit of a visualization. So in any way that you kind of want to imagine this, we invite that. Chrissy and I talked a lot about the work that we do with teen parents, and we kind of came up with this metaphor, analogy, visualization that kind of talked about the work that we do in the young parents that we get to work with. So it's kind of the idea that, you know, the journey of adolescence, you know, usually begins around that 12 or 13. And we kind of visualized it as being able to step into a canoe off of a very secure dock, and you get into your canoe. You have most of the things you need. You've got a map, you've got an oar, you might have a life jacket on even. You've got all the things you need to do to kind of push off the dock and, you know, start that journey into adolescence, which we know is a very unique experience for most people, or for everybody usually. And along the way, you might be paddling along and you might hit rough waters, but oh, you know what? I was told about this. My mom, my dad took the time to tell me about this. So I know how to kind of adapt my journey and how to see myself through this, you know, rough spot in the go along. And, you know, along the journey too, there might be people on the banks who are cheering you along. It could be your mom and dad, your siblings. It could be your basketball coach. It could be teachers. You know, they're cheering you on to, you know, continue this journey, to which then you end up in adulthood, that young adulthood and stuff like that. And throughout, you had to rely on your map that you were maybe given, or a compass, and all these things. So you have all those important pieces with you along the journey, but we know for some people, they might step into their boat and there's a hole in the bottom of the boat, sort of thing. And that might be a representation about family trauma. They don't want the hole in their boat, sort of thing like that, but that's just what's part of their experience, sort of thing like that, right? And they might push off the dock and find that they have a map, but it's in the wrong language, sort of thing like that. So now they don't even know how to, you know, read this map, find their way, sort of thing like that. And instead of maybe having dozens of people on the bank cheering them on, they might only have one or two people on the bank that are cheering them on. And maybe they can't be there all the time. Maybe they can only be there part of the time, right? So it's just a way for us to kind of visualize that that journey of adolescence is so different for everybody, and especially for teen parents, because oftentimes they're stepping into the unknown. And when they get into their boat, you know, they're trying to navigate, figure this out. And then there's a little baby in that boat with them too. So like, not only are they trying to go through this journey themselves, but there's just a little crying baby along with them to try to figure out, how do I take care of this baby, steer my way along this journey, and then also take care of myself throughout, right? So we just like to use this as a visualization to really understand the different experiences everyone has, and especially for teen parents, how it can quite impact their journey through adolescence. And as practitioners, it's really important for us to be really mindful of that, because it helps to inform the things that we do, and also understand the young people that we work with on a really deeper level, and to know why we might get the reaction that we do sometimes, or why, you know, it might take a really long time to get a response and stuff like that. It's just because their journey looks a little bit different than that of other adolescents, their age and stuff like that. So we just like to use that. Feel free to use that in your own way as well. It's just a really nice way to kind of talk about the work that we do and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
Oh no, sorry, go ahead, Chrissy.
No, that's okay. So purpose and reason. So the work is important for many reasons, but the biggest reason is because people believe in the potential of young parents. We want them to do well. We want them to be successful. We want their children to have those things. We don't want to watch people struggle. And so we know they're worth it. We know that they have a place within our community. We need young people. That's how the world works. That's how generations work. And so the people that you want to have in your community you want to be thriving and you want to help them and be part of that journey. And then the other part is we just have an exciting job as practitioners to be there alongside them. So, you know, whether that's helping to navigate that boat sometimes, or to show them how to do that on their own, and walk hand in hand with them. It's really exciting because when they do get it, you know, when they achieve one of their goals or they feel successful, they light up, and it's such a beautiful thing to see. And makes our job just, yeah, it tugs at the heartstrings for sure.
Yes, definitely. So this is just a fun overview of kind of where Expanding Hope, or what we've been doing in 2023. So so in the last few months, Expanding Hope team has gotten the opportunity to travel across lots of places in rural Alberta. I kind of mentioned a couple. So we did a fun little thing where we figured out what our kilometers were just for the drives alone. This doesn't include like the community travel and stuff like that. So in the last year, we've traveled almost 10,000 kilometers between Chrissy and I, and Elise as well. You know, making those drives out to communities, connecting in person, and really making those valuable connections, and just letting people know about Expanding Hope and how we're here to kind of support and provide you know, information, or you know, that capacity or whatever that looks like, sort of thing like that. And we've got lots of plans for more travel in 2024. Like I said, we have this Grand Prairie trip coming up soon, which we're very excited about, and lots more to come, because it's such an important part of what we do. So there's many hats that we get to wear, which is really exciting about a new program like this. We get to figure things out along the way. But the travel has been such a really cool piece of the work that we get to do. So really excited. We could be traveling to your community in the near future. We try to connect ahead of time to let people know that we're coming, and we're really happy to have meetings with people just to chat and talk more about the work that we're doing with young parents and stuff like that. So
Yeah, sorry, I'm just gonna go back, Andrea, that's even in just even the last 6 to 7 months. We've only really started traveling since June. So for us, it's really exciting. That number is it just means that we've had the opportunity for a lot of connections, which is beautiful. Our referral process. So community referral, we do have a referral form that we can send out. You can also, I think you can still get it on our landing page as well. I think it's connected there. So like service providers, FRNs can refer through that, or they can just call us up and we can work together. Clients also can refer. They can self-refer themselves to Expanding Hope. So that would just, they would connect in with Andrea and myself, or Elise, and we would just kind of walk through what they're looking for support, how we might be able to support them, and then really with the goal in mind always to connect them back into their communities. So, and then there's mine and Andrea's direct contact.
Yeah, perfect. So we get the opportunity to kind of ask you guys a bit of questions and learn a little bit more as well. So if anyone wants to take some time to jot down these questions, I'll just read them out. Just hoping, you know, just for a little bit of insight, if anyone feels comfortable to either type it in the chat, which we'll keep an eye on, or to unmute. So I'll just read the questions out. So are there specific thoughts and feelings that stood out when talking about working with teen parents today? How might this be relevant to your community? And are there things from this presentation that you would like to learn more about? So was there something that we kind of mentioned that, you know, you'd like a little bit more info about, sort of thing? We'd be more than happy to chat a little bit more about that. Or even too, if there's any trends or themes that you might be seeing in your community right now that might be playing a part in impacting the teen parent population, or just the teen population in your community. We're always curious to learn about what's kind of what trends and themes that practitioners are seeing in their communities as well. So if anyone feels comfortable, they can raise their hand, or type it in the chat, whichever works for us. Oh, perfect. I see a hand up. I think Alita.
Yeah, this is a kind of a funny question, but I'm wondering, do you guys have any insight on, I know you mentioned at some point, like, maybe young parents just aren't um accessing or aren't, taking the initiative or something to access service providers. I just wonder, like in our community, so like I'm based in Canmore, and the youngest parent I've met here was 26. In my work. I grew up here, and I know like two people from, that I was close in age to in high school who had kids under 25. But and sometimes I'm just not sure. Like I do think part of it is, I mean, it's a very expensive place to live. People tend to have kids here later. People move here and then have kids. So I think like there's that demographic piece, but then I also wonder, like, is it that there are much younger parents than we're aware of, and they're just not accessing service? It like, I'm like, I don't know which one it is, and I don't know how to figure out which one it is.
I was out in Canmore and Banff, maybe in June, and had a visit out to the FCSS out there. And I know like a huge part of it, you're right, is the cost of living out there, and that they're really struggling. They were really struggling with childcare facilities.
Yeah, I think a lot of people leave.
Yeah. But I think there is some youth programming in and around Canmore, right?
Yeah. So I'm like the youth and teen family support worker for the FRN here. So I'm like, and we're kind of like the sister to FCSS, like through the town. And so I mean, I do tons of youth work, but no young parents, or none that I have ever really heard of or met in my work. And I'm just like, are we, like that inaccessible, or is it actually just that there are very, very few, and that demand doesn't exist here?
Yeah. And we hear that a lot from the communities that we visit too. Same thing, like, oh, we saw a teen parent about like 10 years ago and stuff like that. So I think there's a couple things that definitely impacted. I think for sure, like, even with the progress we've made around teen pregnancy, it's still a very taboo topic for a lot of people and for a lot of like generations and communities. So we see oftentimes a lot in Calgary and Edmonton an influx sometimes of people from rural communities coming here to access supports and services as well. And additionally too, or moving to other communities with like family in those communities, sort of thing like that, because it's really, sometimes it can be challenging to take your teen daughter who's 16 to the emergency room when the intake nurse is the wife to the Pee-wee hockey team, right? So I think we know those small town dynamics come into play. I grew up in a small town. Sometimes even having a certain last name would change the reaction that you would get from people. So I think sometimes it's impacted by that for sure. And obviously there's been changes around teen pregnancy and stuff like that too. COVID, I think, really impacted things as well over the last few years, and the number of teen pregnancies that we're seeing, sort of thing. So it is. I think it's an interesting thing that's coming up for a lot of rural communities. It's like, how do we engage with this population if it is out there, and how do we let them know that we're here for them and stuff like that, right? So I think it's there's a few layers to it for sure that impact. And
I think there's some ideas that you can float around that as well. Like I know you're the youth worker, but is there other youth groups? The high school is a great connection, in junior high, because then we can start having conversations about healthy relationships, boundaries, consent, all those wonderful topics that go along and are closely related to the statistics for young parenting, right? And so I don't know if you're connected in with them, but that's a great place to start.
Yeah, I am working with the schools on something kind of related to what you're saying now. I guess was curious if that was something you were seeing in other communities as well, where service providers are like, are we just totally missing this population, or is this number actually just very low where we live? Maybe it's a bit of both.
Probably. Yep. I think it ebbs and flows too. So it's great to know that that our service exists and that we're here if you need it. But your community might be in a place where there isn't a lot of young parents. There just like truly isn't a lot of teenagers or young parents. And so that's okay. But maybe, a year down the road, somebody moves into the community and all of a sudden you come up with somebody, you're like, I know who to call.
Yeah, definitely. Just keeping an eye if I can see it. Chat. Did anyone else have any questions, thoughts? You can throw a hand up or you can put it in a chat or just unmute yourself, either or.
In the meantime, I did stick a short survey into the chat. We would really appreciate going in and filling it out. It just really helps guide us in like what we put out for lunch and learns, what people want to hear more of, you know, people to connect with, the communities to visit. So if you have time, if you have interest, we love hearing the feedback. It just helps us to do better at what we do.
Yeah, perfect. I actually do have a question here in the chat here that I got. So it's just asking about connecting about our information with the primary care network physicians across Alberta. So oftentimes when we go out to visit communities or we're sending posters out, we let them know that they can distribute those posters wherever. I know some of them have ended up in like clinics or physicians' offices on their kind of like resource board and stuff like that. And we're still working on trying to connect with like those broader networks too of like healthcare providers, schools, things like that. We're just trying to work around like how to start building those relationships as well, because we realize that's such a key place to where we could connect with that teen parent population. So that's a really great question and a great reminder that that is such a great network to tap into as well. So, but yeah, we're more than happy to share information with all sorts of networks to try to get connected and just kind of like Chrissy said, let them know that even if they don't have teen parents that they're connected to right now, if they have some later on down the road, you can send a referral whenever. There's no kind of time constraint to that sort of thing. So
Yeah,
but
and
yeah,
happy to consult too, right? Like if you're
yeah,
doing the work and you're like, they don't need the service, but you're looking for ideas or like, have you come across this before? Sometimes just having a few more brains in there generating some ideas can be really helpful to breaking through on something.
yes, for sure. And I realized too in our presentation, we forgot to mention that we're more than happy to work with teen dads too, sort of thing like that. So if you were sending a referral for a teen dad, more than happy to work with them. That's not a problem if, they're comfortable with, female identifying workers or thing like that, then we're more than happy to connect with them and to provide the same supports and services that we would to moms as well. So. Just making sure there's no more chat questions. No, I think I'm good. Oh,
Good question.
got one here.
And where can I find info on merchandise?
Yeah, so we will be able to provide the slides afterwards for sure for you guys to use. And then so the information about Lunch and Learns, we try to flag that out in a lot of different places. We send it out primarily through email. So if you were wanting to get connected on that email list, you could send your email to either Chrissy and I, and we can make sure that we add you to the list as well. And maybe just like a little blurb about what FCSS you're connected to or what agency as well. And then those emails, we talk about the times, what the topics will be on and things like that. So primarily through email. And if you wanted to kind of get added to our distribution list of letting you know, you can just send us your email. We'd be more than happy to add you to that list. Seems like right now we're working on trying to have one lunch and learn each month. So if you're interested in that, definitely let us know. And we try to send out posters to things like that too. So if you wanted to print some out or send it to other members on your team, it's all more than welcome to do that as well. They're hosted on Zoom usually. We try to change it up between mornings and afternoons and as well for times to be flexible to people's schedules. So. Making sure there's no hands up that I'm missing. I think we're good.
Perfect. Well, if there's no other questions, then
sorry, I just saw one pop into the chat.
okay,
Lunch and Learns are all virtual. They're all on Zoom. They're completely virtual. We don't host in-person ones. So they're yeah, completely virtual, just through a Zoom link, really quick registration. Yeah, so it's nice that we can do them on Zoom because then we can reach a much larger audience as well. So just making sure I didn't miss any messages. Awesome. And then, yeah, like Chrissy said, that link is in the chat for the survey. So if you could take some time to just fill it out really quick, that would be really wonderful. We would really, really appreciate that as well.
And we do thank everyone for spending some of the morning with us. It's always great. The better reach we get, the more we can help out as as a larger team, and the more, yeah, I think it's better. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to, yeah, take some time to listen to our presentation and learn a little bit more about Expanding Hope and about the wonderful population of teen parents that we get to work with.
And thanks, Melissa, for setting it up.
Yes. Yes, and at least for the land acknowledgement, we so appreciate it.
Yeah.
This is excellent. Thank you very much. Were there any, I see there's things in the chat. Are those just thank yous? I can't.
It looks like it's just thank yous. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you to the Expanding Hope team. Thanks for everyone for joining us. We will send out the recording and the slides. Now, we typically send it to our membership. So however you found out about this, just make sure you circle back and get that recording from the person who may have sent this to you if you're not on our direct email list. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. And I think if everyone's got that link to complete the survey, I can leave this open just a bit longer so that you get that link, because I know getting that feedback is always really helpful.
Yes,
So,
definitely.
thank you so much. All right. Take care, everyone.